Hey everyone, I'm Greg Lambert with the LVN Spotlight, and this month we've got Aaron Boersma, who is the Strategic Pricing and Analysis Lead in Legal Operations at Ford Motor Company. And he's also the LVNX 2025 Conference Co-Chair. So, one job's not enough. Aaron's got to take on two. So, Aaron, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, it's really great to be with you, Greg.
All right. Well, I think the most pressing question that people wanted to know after you moved to Ford is what car are you driving now?
I'm driving a Ford Explorer now, and I am about to upgrade to the Ford Expedition,
All right.
which is just great.
Those are
I'm
the
not
ones that are like 40 feet long, right?
that is exactly right. To haul around my three small children, and all of the things that it takes to travel with them. That's we ultimately decided the big car was worth it. But I'm absolutely driving a Ford, and actually have been since well before I joined the company, which is pretty
Well
fun.
done. Well done. All right. Well, let's jump into your job there. You're leading the strategic pricing and analysis there at Ford. So how do you, as an in-house legal team, think about value, and how has that shaped your approach with working with the outside counsel?
Yeah, for us, I mean, and certainly for me, it's something that's really been developed over time. And we're we're really trying to think differently about what how to think about things like legal pricing and, quite frankly, what it looks like to invest in outside counsel, kind of full stop. Because if you think about what it looks like for large companies, Ford and really anyone else, to invest in an external partnership, whether it's with a law firm or any other type of vendor, ultimately, it is a capital investment that looks to get to outcomes, protect the business, et cetera, like that. And so we actually think of our sort of pricing and analysis group under this sort of guise of spend innovation, of really trying to think outside the box and say, how do we make sure that we are being the best stewards of the company's resources from end to end? And so what that means is actually taking a look at our investments in different tranches of work, almost as if taking playbooks out of other sort of industries and what have you. And so all in all, we're in such a dynamic environment right now that sort of the one size fits all of like, here's how we think about value is really tough. We're sort of an industry right now that is in a bit of a transition about how we think about value and efficiency. And so because of that, really sort of in our DNA within my team, we call ourselves Spend Innovation, because it's like we need to be nimble. We need to constantly be sort of checking ourselves of, are we thinking about this the right way? Are we what do we think is valuable today, and is it the same as it was yesterday? And so it's a long drawn out answer to say we're in this wild period where figuring out which way is up in terms of this like value is really hard.
Yeah.
But that also brings some of the most exciting work and such a benefit to having really good communities within kind of this ecosystem to really kick ideas around and make sure that we're all, frankly, just pushing our industry forward.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, I know that you've been with LVN since the beginning, but what initially drew you to the Legal Value Network, and how has that involvement kind of shaped your thinking around legal ops pricing or collaboration from when it started to now?
Yeah. So my exposure to this organization extends back, like a lot of us, to when this conference, our primary conference, LVNX, was called P3 when it was part
Yeah.
of LMA. I graduated from college, and the next Monday started as a pricing analyst. Candidly, I didn't even know what I was getting myself into,
It's all right. None of us
or
do.
really,
None of us do.
or really what the job was. Don't tell my first boss, Brad Antisi, that. But um, actually, one of my first weeks there, it was after one of the first P3 conferences, and really sort of this community was starting to sort of come together. And my boss was sort of describing it's amazing, spent some time in Chicago with just others that were in this space. And there was really sort of the freedom to talk about what are our challenges? How do we all collectively start to get better? Um, and what I saw was a willingness to be sort of open and vulnerable about what's really good, what's really hard, and then a community that just said, how do we start to get better together? Um, and those are the types of environments that I've always been sort of drawn towards is how do we sort of take the collective wisdom of the group, make some friends along the way, but ultimately make us better at our jobs. And you've seen what the power of that is over the last more than a decade, where the idea of a chief value officer or a chief practice management officer, or a chief innovation officer, right? Those weren't those weren't real, right?
Yeah.
But now they very much are a part of a law firm's DNA on how they bring themselves to market. And so, really the power of what this community within LVN can do is fundamentally reshaping what law firms and what the legal industry looks like. And so for me, ever since the beginning, seeing those early signs of just community and wisdom and things coming through, wanted to be a part. And then as a part of this community, have just seen everyone really fundamentally transform what all of this has looked like. And that's super exciting.
Yeah, and I know you've contributed a lot to a lot of your time and effort to LVN, and that continues this year as you serve as co-chair for LVNX coming up in September, right? September, right?
That's right.
Um,
And it's September.
wow, that's right around the corner now.
It
Um,
is.
so what's your vision for the conference this year, and what are you most excited for the attendees to experience while they're up there?
Yeah. We are LVNX is different than most conferences and in a really exciting way. For us, we have just a really high emphasis on making sure that we have quality content that is not just some of your boilerplate, recycled, what have you, that is really pertinent to what we are currently facing today. In fact, we have an entire infrastructure behind the scenes that is set up to make sure that when you walk in the door as an attendee to LVNX, that you are going to get sessions that are pertinent to the day, that are practical and takeaways, so that when you go back to your law firms, when you go back to your corporate legal departments, when you go back, even as a provider that's attending at LVNX, you really do have practical takeaways on one, where are we moving and how do I start to do that myself? How do I make sure that I am continuing to sort of push our law firms forward, push our organizations forward, et cetera? But on top of that, what you can expect is frankly just a community that's very present and that wants to lean in. If you're a first timer at LVNX, I can guarantee you're going to walk away with half a dozen friends that you're going to know for a very, very long time. I mean, even just for me, I can say probably the top 15 people in terms of who I've called in the last week. I would say probably 12 of those are those that I know from LVNX. And so not only will you get to sort of swap war stories on things you're facing, but quite frankly, just being around a community of really great and awesome people that are honestly worth it to know just well outside of work, which is a really fun place to come. And I think being a part of a community like that is so critically important for our own personal growth, for the growth of our organizations. And our theme this year is LVNX Elevates because we really do believe that this community is what's going to elevate our profession and move it forward.
Well, but I know all of us are excited and looking forward to that, and thinking in September in Chicago is going to be probably the best time of year to be there. So it's a good
That
combination.
is as someone who formerly lived in Chicago, I could not be happier that we are September in Chicago. Just
Yeah.
so long as the Cubs are playing at home, we're going to be okay.
All right. So, wanted to ask you about for the people that are in law firms or are partners and vendors who are watching this. What would you say clients like Ford are really looking forward or looking for in value-driven partnerships right now? We've got a lot of change going on,
Yeah.
technology, politically, economically. So what's a value-driven partnership look like?
Yeah. Look, the only thing constant right now is uncertainty. That is the truth. Um, economic and otherwise. But what that brings forth is an extraordinary opportunity. I think of the name outside counsel inherent in that. If a corporate legal department talks about a law firm, they don't call them a law firm, they call them outside counsel. And I think there's an inherent identity that organizations are looking to law firms to counsel them first and foremost. In the small issues, in the big issues, but to really be there for them. So when I think about value, I think about how do organizations frankly counsel through issues and not become just these productivity machines that we're sort of managing. Um, and what I mean by that, quite frankly, is organizations that are just asking questions of how do we get better? How do we just get incrementally better? And a great example of like value, right? And I'm going to I'll plug, AI as a general theme
All
here,
right.
but, think about if you were a lawyer and you never had to start with a blank page ever again, right? Or even you didn't even have to start with a template necessarily. You could have a full draft that actually, did the control F for you in drafting for whatever entity you're doing, right? Let's say that saves you 10 to 15 minutes, but it saves 10 to 15 minutes on things that you frankly don't really like to do, and then alleviates your brain space to really focus on what does my client need? How do I give them the best representation that I can, et cetera, from there, right? We're
Mhm.
talking about small little margins that our lawyers can get back in headspace that actually makes the difference of them being able to be really good counselors for us. And so ultimately, my advice is just continue to say, how do we continue to get better? How do we start to move the needle forward? That is so much of why LVN exists. That's why LVNX exists, is to provide a way for law firms to really get a sense of how do we continue to move forward. And frankly, I don't think that there is a more important time to be a part of the LVNX community as a law firm, because the collective wisdom of just incrementally trying to get better, a rising tide lifts all boats. And I think there's so much excitement around that piece.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Aaron Boersma, a strategic pricing and analysis lead at for legal operations at Ford Motor Company, and LVNX conference co-chair for this year. Thanks for joining me and letting us shine the spotlight on you this month.
Awesome. That sounds great. Thanks, Greg.